Welcome, Geoff Dyer. I'm glad you came here to talk about your new book, Another Great Day at Sea. And I wonder, does it have a subtitle?
Yes, it does. The subtitle is Life Aboard the SS George H.W. Bush. So there's a great photograph on the cover, but the truth is, with my name and all that stuff, there's not a lot of, you can't see much of the picture. There's a lot of words.
So it's an actual aircraft carrier?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's a Nimitz class aircraft carrier. So it's this whopping great thing, you know, huge great thing, 5,000 people. The background to it is I was a writer in residence on board this quite stunning vessel for a couple of weeks, and then in exchange for that I had to write a book about my experience.
So was that at the behest of like the American government?
Well, it was set up, there was this, you know, Alain de Botton, the Swiss-British writer, he set up this thing called Writers in Residence, and the idea was that instead of putting writers in residence where they've always been in residence, you know, colleges and perhaps more dramatically prisons or something, you know, the idea was to get writers into really unusual places, and they set up a whole series of these things, and I think I was the first person to reside in, you know, the place chosen. And I'm imagining behind the scenes there was a lot of toing and froing and checking and stuff, but from my point of view it was incredibly painless, the process of getting me on the boat.
So it's interesting, you know, I think of your other writing, and you've written about the art world, and you've written about taking drugs, and you've written about yoga, and you've written about major literary figures. What connection do you have to an aircraft carrier, or what do you have now?
Yeah, well, I've always had a profound connection with aircraft carriers, I think, because of my age. I'm 1958 and I'm English, so my childhood was so totally dominated by the Second World War. Not by the actual thing, you know, my sense of history isn't that awry, but by the way it was recreated in books, films, TV, documentaries, all of this sort of stuff. And, you know, of course, as a kid I was making all those model airplanes, so you know, it was really in my blood, all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, I developed this increasing sort of fascination with all things military in my sort of middle age. And really, I didn't, you know, as soon as he said, is there somewhere unusual you'd like to go? Because at that point it wasn't possible to get into space, which would have been my first choice, I opted for an aircraft carrier. Yeah. So.
Did you get to go up in any planes while you were?
Well, I mean,
is that in the book?
Yeah, we flew onto the carrier on this in this sort of personnel carrying plane, a propeller plane. So we did about 12 of us, I think. So we did the full descent and arrested landing, you know, with the wire. Except first time in, we missed the arresting wire, so we went down steeply, then charged off again. So that was fun. And then we flew off, we were catapulted off the plane at the end. But obviously what I didn't do, I didn't fly in an F-18 jet, because they're either single seats or two-seaters. And even if it's a two-seater, the person in the second seat is not a passenger.
Has to know how to fly the plane.
Yeah, that's so, I mean, there was just no room available. But of course I would love to have done that. Although I'm not here to boast. Well, I sort of am in a way. But I have flown in a MiG-29 in my time, so.
Do you think you're the only person at this book festival who has flown in a MiG-29?
I'd say I'm probably the only person at this book festival who's really got the right stuff, yeah.
So when you started writing, like, what was the first thing that you published? And when you did that, would you have ever imagined that that would have gotten you onto an aircraft carrier someday?
Yeah, right. You know, I've written a ton of books now, and when I got a copy of the new book the other day, you know, I looked at by the same author page, and it was this immense kind of, you know, batch of books, and I never imagined or intended that to happen. And I think the reason I've ended up writing quite a lot of books is just because I've always thought that each one was going to be the last, you know, and it's not that I ever had a grand plan or a scheme in view, you know, but I've had a lot of interests, and although, you know, you might rightly say, geez, this book on the aircraft carrier has got nothing to do with anything that's gone before. But I promise you, we could keep going back in time, and each new book would have been a radical surprise given the one that had gone before. So, you know, the look of horror on my editor's face in England when the book Yoga for People Who Can't Be Bothered to Do It was followed up by a history of photography. You know, so it's been a sort of anti-career made up of these kind of continual non sequiturs like that.
I would ask you what comes next, but obviously we'll have no idea.
Yeah, at the moment I'm not writing a book because I'm writing so many essays and bits and pieces, and you know, I'd like to be again in that rhythm of writing a book, because it's nice to wake up each day and, you know, you're in that kind of, you know, ongoing groove. But equally, I've always set quite a lot of store by the essay writing stuff. So there's too many sort of interesting, stimulating things coming my way, really. And you know, for example, I've just written a couple of introductions to reissues of books that really mean a lot to me, and that is just an incredible thing for me. I mean, I think it was last year I wrote the introduction to Roland Barthes' Camera Lucida. The idea, if somebody had told me that when I was 22, that one day I'd end up between the covers with Roland Barthes, well, that really would have been a source of almost inconceivable happiness to me.
Well, Geoff Dyer, that is a great way to send us off. Thank you for you're one of our new literary lights here in Los Angeles, and thank you for coming to the book festival.
Oh, thank you so much.
And your new book is Another Great Day at Sea.
Another Great Day at Sea, yeah. Thank you.